या हाज़रीन मजलिस, अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू।
वालेकुमुस्सलाम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू.
So welcome everyone on this rather hot day, and inshallah I hope we can all keep awake first of all with this heat, and everyone has water, so that's good. And it's a good thing to remind us when we are feeling so hot of why we are here to commemorate and what we are here to commemorate, right? It's so easy for us to fall into the trap of how hard this is and how many things are standing in our way of Azadari. And when we think what we are here to commemorate, it really gives us an opportunity to rise up, to focus on what's important. And despite the challenges of the heat, and wearing masks in this heat is really not not easy. And we are here to commemorate those who did a lot more than this. So we have been talking about the pursuit and practice of ihsan. And we started by talking about the fact that the role models are role models for living a life of virtue, living a life of kindness, living a life of piety, living a life of excellence, are the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So they are the goal that we strive towards, knowing full well that we can't reach it, and yet those are our role models, right? That's who we aspire to be like. And the practice part of it is the things that we can do on a daily basis. And the thing with practice is that while you are doing it, you're actually achieving it, right? So the practice is it's not a project, it's not something that you complete, that you finish, it's something that you live every day. So just like, one of the nicest examples is attention in Salah. Has anyone here said, oh, you know what, I can pay attention in Salah, I don't need to think about it anymore, right? It's not like that. It's when we are praying Salah, when we are when we have our attention, when we have presence of heart, when we have presence of mind, then we are in Salah, then we are achieving the benefits of it. And it's a continuous practice. Just like that, living a life of ihsan is something that we do on a moment by moment basis. So no matter where we are, in our practices, in our self-development, all of us can have moments of ihsan in our life. There are moments where we can practice kindness, where we can practice virtue, and at that point we are practicing ihsan, right? So that's actually a really good thing to remember, that sometimes when we're hearing so many things, especially during these months, we get a bit lost. I don't know about you, but I feel overwhelmed. I don't know where to start, I don't know what to focus on, and if we just focus on this minute, so yesterday we had some homework, right? What was the homework? Does anyone remember? I'm going to try and talk simply so that we all stay awake, because I don't know about you, but if I'm on the listening end in such warm, beautiful, there's a breeze, but it's quite hot, right? So we should try to keep each other awake. What was the homework for yesterday? Does anyone remember? Or maybe it was a completely different crowd, okay? So the homework for yesterday was actually to go home and thank the members of your household for something. Did anyone remember to do that? Sorry?
Yes.
Okay, Alhamdulillah.
My granddaughter was here. She came home and she hugged me and said, thanks for taking me to such a nice practice.
Alhamdulillah. Isn't that beautiful, right?
Alhamdulillah.
And so that's ihsan. Literally it's as simple as that. We talk about a lot of things and they can seem really complicated, but in that moment, if you are acting with a good intention and you're doing something good, you are practicing ihsan. Does that make sense? Okay. So yesterday we started talking about being on the receiving end, having other people do good things for us, and what is our responsibility, what are our roles in being on the receiving end. And we talked about Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. He gives us some recommendations, that we're obviously supposed to thank the person, we are supposed to make good mention of them, if we can do something for them in return, we should, and if we can't, we need to pray for the opportunity that we can help them in some way, right? And even if we can't help them in any way, we can at least A, pray for them, and B, pass it forward. So if somebody is doing good things to us, and all of us are on the receiving end of so much goodness, right? So if nothing else, we can keep the flow going rather than let it stop with us, okay? And then we, and we also talked about how actually appreciation and being in this state of gratitude is very spiritually expansive, and that it's really good for us. So it's good for our bodies, it's good for our souls, it's good for our mental, emotional well-being, and it's really good for our relationships, right? So it's like a win-win all around. And then we talked about, so how do we prioritize? Do we pick and choose people that we're good to, or do we just show kindness to everyone? And we said that we have a lot of authority, a lot of hadiths which tell us not to be judgmental. Whoever is in front of us, it's, our job is to be kind to them. Their business is what? How they receive that kindness, and God's business is everything else, right? So when we focus on our business is simply if we see a person in need, if we can help them in any way, if we can show kindness in any way, we need to do that. And also, being ambassadors of our faith, especially living in the West, living in anywhere where is even in a Muslim country, right? People, especially when we are visibly Muslim, people are looking to us. They're looking to us, and they are actually seeing how we behave, and they make judgments about the faith depending on how we are presenting ourselves, right? So we have a double kind of obligation and responsibility. The only exception we mentioned was what? Who should we not help, or who should we not, go out of our way to show, to do good things for? Is if we feel that we are enabling ineffective behavior. And we talked about what that meant, even in our homes, if our children are capable of doing something, but we are over-functioning. And as mothers, we are queens of over-functioning, right? We take on way more than we need to, and we end up really depleted. And we'll talk about that today. But the idea is that that's not really ihsan. It comes from my ego, right? So we have to keep checking, is this coming from my ego, or is it coming from what God has ordained for me? So now, from today, so we've been doing trying to be practical, but we've also done quite a bit of theory up to now. And from today, inshallah, we'll try to make it really, really practical, things that we can take home and start doing today, okay? So, how do we prioritize? That's, our big topic for today, given that we have limited time and energy. And yesterday we talked a lot about the fact that, when we are doing something, we take it on, we start with a really good intention. So whether we are volunteering, whether we are trying to do something at home, we overfunction, we say, yes, I can do this, yes, I can do this, I have so much energy, I'm so young. And then because I'm so good at everything, people keep giving me more things to do. And before I know it, I am feeling resentful, and this is not what I signed up for, right? And we did that example of the keys to the mosque, that you signed up for one thing once a week, and now that's your life, okay? And many people who will do things, start out like that, can experience that, right? That's a very, very common experience. So how do we prioritize? First of all, the things that I'm going to be talking today are about limitations, right? Like not doing too much. But before we go there, we really have to remind ourselves that, we need to check in with ourselves. I need to look at my life circumstances, I need to look at my calendar and actually see how much I am contributing to the world. If I'm just feeling overwhelmed because, like I said yesterday, I have a leak in my basement and I'm feeling overwhelmed, that's not really doing anything for anyone else, okay? However, if I'm finding that, I'm spending 40, 50 hours a week volunteering and I'm feeling depleted, then maybe I should do a little bit less, right? Why do I start with that? Is because we know that the Quran is full of verses where it says that people on the day of judgment, it's called the day of regret, Yawmul Hasra. Hasra means what? Yearning, it's regret, right? I wish I had made different choices. I wish I had made different choices. And one of the different choices obviously is how we spend our time. So if I am, for example, and again, looking at myself, if I look at myself, I'm on Instagram 2 hours a day, I'm watching Netflix 3 hours a day, then I can probably fit in something for other people, right? However, if I have nothing, I'm not even exercising, I'm not sleeping enough, I'm not doing enough because I have obligations at home and obligations outside, then again, so it starts with self-awareness, okay? So, how do we prevent what is called burnout? And yesterday we started by talking about how that, when we are doing, when we are on the path of Ihsan, when we are volunteering, we are doing good works, we're doing things for other people, there will be definitely times when we are quote unquote stressed. What I mean by stressed is that we are working hard. It's not an easy path, right, in that sense. However, if you are in alignment with your purpose, it's not only stress, it should give you something back. Remember, we keep saying that the reward of Ihsan is Ihsan. So in other words, when I'm contributing, I should experience a feeling of joy, of contribution, of meaning in my life, right? And by the way, that's one of the keys to mental and emotional well-being, is to have a purpose. Many people, especially as we get older, and our families have grown up, and we have focused all our lives on being a mom, right? Especially for mothers. And please get, so many young people, young mothers come and they say, I'm not doing anything with my life. I'm like, you have 4 children. You're not doing anything with your life. You are a full-time mother, right? So it's a season. At that point, your ihsan, if you are doing your parenting to the best of your ability, if you are bringing up those kids, whether or not you choose to work outside the home, I'm not saying it one way or the other, right? But if you are focused on your family and you find that you don't have any time for anything else, please do not minimize what you're doing. Please do not do that. This is a really Western concept that until and unless we are either famous, we're doing something publicly, or we're getting paid for what we're doing, our time is not meaningful. This is not our faith. Our faith gives the highest respect to mothers, okay? So please, this does not mean that if you're at home and you're not, this is not talking to young mothers who already have a full plate, okay? In fact, I often get into trouble with committees at the mosque because, when they approach young people, they say, well, Marzi auntie told us we should only focus on parenting. So, and it's true, right? If you find that if you are adding volunteering to your plate, and at the end of it your family is suffering, or your work or anything else that's already in your life is suffering, you need to make a choice, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, okay? So basically, this is 5 keys. It's 5 keys to preventing burnout. Burnout means what? That you are not enjoying what you're doing, you're not doing it with the right intention, you're just doing it because you don't want to look bad, in essence, with people, okay? The first thing is, know your purpose, know your destination, and remember your why. Remember your why means what? So when you said yes to something, it was very likely with a really good intention, right? Because you wanted to help. You wanted to either please a believer or you wanted to please God. Those are generally the reasons why we do good things, okay? So that needs to be renewed, that intention, something that we started 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, our intention may not be the same today. Because Allah tells us, right, the Hadith tells us that it's very easy to start something with a good intention. It's very challenging to keep something with a good intention, right? And Allah tells us in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسَوْا اللَّهِ, means do not forget Allah. If you forget Allah, Allah will make you forget your own souls. What does this mean? So if we think that our destination, right, we are ilallah, we are on the path, we are on the sabil of Allah, and we forget. So if we're going, for example, from here to Mississauga, as long as I know I'm going to Mississauga, I'm going to square one, even if I get lost or whatever, my destination is square one, right? So I will arrive there, tera mera, somehow I will arrive there. Now imagine if it's someone like me, you leave the house, you have no idea where you're going, right? You forget. You forget why you left the house and you forget where you're going. Are you going to reach there? No, you're going to be lost, right? So we need to really remember our goal. If our goal is the pleasure of Allah, then we all say it, right, all the time. But we need to renew that intention. What intention? What do I mean? So one of the practices, and this is the really practical part of it, is before you do anything. So say imagine you are working outside the home, you come home and you're about to go inside. And you know, as soon as you open that door, chaos is going to greet you. True? That's how it is in most families with young kids or whatever. There is chaos at home in the evenings. It's the most stressful time, right? So you already know that that's what's greeting you. Before you step inside, just make an intention. Make an intention that you are going to show up with your best self, that you're going to show up with kindness, that you're going to show up with compassion, that you are going to take charge of yourself before you enter that. That's what I'm talking about, right? Before, say you're volunteering at the mosque. Before you actually enter the mosque, and it doesn't take even 30 seconds. It's a matter of being present. That's all it is, right? Before you step, by the way, do you know, right, that when we're walking towards the mosque, we're supposed to pray, right? We're supposed to pray, remind me, that I'm walking on the path of Allah, right? Millat Rasulullah, that's what I'm doing. So, the same way, while we are doing that, we need to remind ourselves. Now, imagine that I'm feeling not good. So I'm walking, I'm saying all of this, but it's not really that's not where I am. Right? Beautiful dua that we are supposed to recite before every namaz, right? Ya muhsinu qad atakal musi, fatajawaz an qabihi ma indi bijamilika ya kari. So, Ya muhsinu qad atakal musi. Oh, Ya muhsin. So again coming from ihsan, right? The one who is the most muhsin. Standing before you is a person who is full of sin and full of bad intentions, full of that. Through your grace, change what is evil in me with your beauty. Isn't that so beautiful? So it literally reminds us that we need to have the correct intention. I remember talking to a friend once, and she has this beautiful voice of reciting Quran. Like you could just hear her for hours, right? And something which I don't. And I told her, I said, I really wish I could recite like you. I've always wished that I had a good voice, and I wish I could recite like you. So she said, what's your intention? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what my intention is. I just want to be able to recite and it sound pleasant and people hear me and I hear myself. And she said, you know what my intention was? To be able to praise God. Right? And that was really a aha moment for me, right? So Allah chooses who He gives the gifts to, right? He knows who's going to use it in a beautiful way. So practice setting your intention, pray. Then the second point is that we need to get really clear on what our expectations are from ourselves and what our expectations are from other people. So if I've signed up for something, what am I signing up for exactly? Very often we are not clear and others are not clear, right? So I may say yes, but they don't know what I've said yes to. I don't know what I've said yes to. I'll help you if I can. I'll try, right? One of the most triggering words is I'll try. I'll try gives other people very unclear things of what to expect from you. So a really good habit and practice when we are signing up for something is be really clear, set boundaries. This is what I'm willing to do and this is what I'm not willing to do. And I know if you're not used to it, it sounds, what does it sound like? Not nice. Not nice, right? Nice is one of the most annoying words in the English language, by the way. What is nice? Nice is not ihsan, by the way. When we try to be nice, we please neither God nor other people. Really. Because if you're not clear with other people, say if you say a clear no, I'm not willing to do this, right? They might feel upset after 2 minutes, but they'll get over it. Hopefully they'll find somebody who is committed to the project. If you say yes, but you're really not committed, right, and you keep trying to, like, you're not doing your best, they're going to be mad at you for much longer. Does that make sense? Okay. So, also, when we are deciding what to do, given that we have limited energy, limited time, and limited resources, we should focus them on things that make a difference. In the sense that all of us have been given certain gifts. All of us, right? Your gift is very different from my gift. And we can't, we need to stay in our own lane. Like, you can't compete with me, I can't compete with you, right? Now imagine that there is somebody who's really good at artwork, okay? So you give them this project, that can you please, help me design some books for the madrasa, for example. They say, great, this is exactly what I like to do, I'll do it. Then, then you start saying, what, this, like, my computer's not working, can you fix my computer? Now my voice, I'm saying this because my technology never cooperates, right? So now I have a problem with this, can you help me with this, can you help me with that? And the problem with that is that they, even if they say yes, it's taking them away from their gift, isn't it? If they have, say, in their calendar, they have 5 hours to contribute to your project, okay? Now, instead of working where they're good at, what the world needs and what they love, now they're doing things which they may be okay at, but that's not their gift. Does that make, like, is that making sense or not? Not making sense. Okay. So the third thing is we need to set boundaries. What does a boundary mean? Sorry? Well, goals is one thing, right? But boundary is basically being able to say no. This is what I can do and this is what I cannot do. Like, literally, I remember, because I talk about these things, my kids call me out on it all the time, right? So the phone would ring and my youngest daughter, who also happens to be now a therapist, but at that point she wasn't, she would come to me and she would be mouthing this, say no, mama. You can do it. Come on, you can do it. Say no, no, N-O, come on, you can do it. And then when I would hang up, she would be like, she would have this really disgusted look on her face and she said, you didn't, did you? Right? It's hard. It takes practice. But once we start practicing, it is the most liberating thing. It really is. So, if we are not able to say no, we are saying no anyway. If you're saying yes to everything, right? You ask me something, I say yes. You ask me something, I say yes. You ask me something, I say yes. Who am I saying no to? Sorry? Myself, for sure. Who else? My family, for sure. Again, I'm giving them what's left over, right? So, in order to protect what is most important to us, we need to be able to say no. That's not what I agreed to, and we'll talk about how, because obviously there are ways to do it, right? So, and there's, in case people think that I'm just making this up and the Imams never ever said no to people, there's this beautiful hadith from Imam Jafar Sadiq. So one day the companion Anwan al-Basri, right, we've all heard that name, he came to Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam and he had some questions. So obviously Imam entertained him, he answered all the questions, and then after that he was kind of like me, hard to say goodbye. So he just hung around, he was just around. And so Imam tells him, surely I'm a man with a purpose and a destination to reach. Therefore, I have dedicated a worship for every hour of my day and night, so please do not keep me away from my worship. People who achieve a lot in the world say a lot of no. If you say yes to everyone, you cannot live your purpose. You cannot. It's being a people pleaser is actually a huge, it's a big burden. So if we remind ourselves that when we are saying no, what are we saying yes to? We're saying yes to, there's a beautiful line in, I think it's in Makarim al-Akhlaq, but it's in the Sahifa for sure. that Imam asked Allah, help me spend my days for the work which you have created me for. Help me spend my time for the work that you have created me for. Your work and my work is different, right? So when we remind ourselves that, say a clear no, when I say maybe, I'll try, that's when we get into trouble. I'll tell you why. If I've said yes to someone, or not yes, but I've said, I'll try. Believe me, everything I'm talking about today is learned through a lot of experience, okay? And it's still a learning in process, okay? What happens is that I've not closed that chapter, okay? So it's on the list, it's taking energy in my mind because it's an open loop. They call it open loop, right, in psychology. It's not closed. So it's still taking my mental energy. The person who is on the receiving end of the maybe is also an open loop because they have hope. They have hope that I will say yes and it's just a matter of time, and if somebody harasses me enough, I'll say yes, right? It's not healthy. It's again taking us away from things that matter a lot. So, how did the Ahlul Bayt manage their time? Okay, so there's it's narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That when he entered the house, he would split his time into 3 portions. A portion dedicated to his family, a portion dedicated for worship in connection with his Lord, and a portion for himself and attending to the needs of others, right? In Islam, that's the amazing part of it. It's the whole experience is one of balance. We cannot just go into a cave. Sometimes I really wish we could. Because when we're in a cave, we're only dealing with God, right? An entity who is perfect, never harasses us, right? Never asks anything of us, only gives and is silent. However, we can't do that, right? We need to live amongst imperfect human beings. So, again, there's another hadith which says, this is from Nahjul Balagha, it says the believer's time has 3 portions. A portion for connecting to his Lord, a portion for managing his livelihood, and a portion for when he is free to enjoy what is lawful and pleasant. In other words, you need a break. You can't just keep going 24/7. And yes, like I said, if it is prime time, if it's a time when you are called upon to do, more than you are able to, great. Go for it. But if that's your lifestyle, that's not healthy, right? And again, literally, I'm going to be listening to this recording, okay, several times because I'm reminding myself. So Imam Khomeini was known for being like a clock. So one of his neighbors, and I'm not even sure, I don't think that he was even Muslim, but he reports that, when this man would spend time on his balcony. Now, let's remind ourselves that he was an arif, right? He was a Gnostic in the sense that he wrote, like his writings till today are very, like you read Adab Salah and it takes a long time to digest. It's very deep, okay? So he was an arif, he was a politician, so he was managing a country and he had family responsibilities, right? And when I heard that he would be going out on the balcony, I was like, what? What? How did he find time to go on the balcony? It said that, there were certain times when you could you could set your clock by his schedule. So if there was a certain time, he would be there playing with his grandkids. Isn't that amazing, right? And we say, oh, I don't have time for you, okay? So his neighbor says that, when this man used to come out, at precisely 9 p.m., he would go into another room of the house. And he said he was so consistent that if he was going in, I did not need to look at my watch. I knew that it must be 9 o'clock because he's gone in. Isn't that really amazing, right? There's so much to learn. So, and by the way, I'm not sure if it's him or one of our great ulama who have passed away. The kind of ihsan they showed to his family. It said that when they would wake up in the middle of the night, nowadays we have very sophisticated plumbing, right? But the water sound, he did not want it to wake up his wife, and he did not want to disturb so he would put a cloth under the tap so that it would not disturb the family. These are the little things that look like that what ihsan looks like, right? The fourth point, form meaningful connections, and extremely important, right? We are not the path of ihsan is not a singular journey. It's not an individual journey. We need to take people with us, right? It's again a very modern concept. It's a failed modern concept that human beings are independent. If I want to go fast, if I'm in a big rush, then yes, I can go alone. If I want to go far, I have to take other people with me. I cannot make it alone, right? And we talked about how Allah has created the universe so that we are all interdependent, and your well-being is tied to my well-being, and my well-being is tied to your well-being, right? So what is your support system? When you are feeling depleted, I call them my lifelines. You know what I'm talking about? Some friends who you can count on, some family members who you can count on, some people you don't even know that well who are just a lifeline. So I have like a resource lifeline for sure. So if I'm stuck, if I'm studying something, I know there's a hadith, but I can't remember, I have many people I can count on. I can't just sit and, do this, without help and support, right? So similarly, Allah keeps sending us people in our paths. We just need to reach out to them. And as women, again, in the modern world, we have this idea that if I reach out, if I ask for help, it means I'm weak, right? And again, this hadith is beautiful. It says, again from Anwar Basri, it says, I asked, O Abu Abdullah, what is true devotion? He answered, it consists in three things. I'm only going to read the first one and the second one. The servant must not consider himself as the true owner of what God has granted upon him. And they must not trust their affairs to themselves. In other words, you can't go it alone. And also if you are doing something, right? If you're doing a good thing, one is, yes, keep it private between you and God, depending on what it is, especially if you're giving money, right? But if you're doing something which other people could also partake in, like I always, so I joke with my friends, right? I said, why are you hogging all the sawab to yourself, right? So you're doing something good, let me help. If I do something, I can also, your sawab is, that's the amazing thing about Allah, right? That's why He is the Al-Muhsin. That if I invite you to contribute in a positive way to something good that I'm doing, my sawab won't become less, and you will get it. And in fact, every time you do something, I'll also. So I always say that God is the ultimate. What do they call it? What are those things called? The multi marketing. Pyramid marketing, that if I sell to you, then I'll get a proportion of it, and then if you sell to someone, I'll still get a proportion. So I always say Allah is the ultimate of that, right? Because no matter, but it doesn't come from nobody's share becomes less, right? So again, invite people, and of course, invite them with the recognition that if they say no, don't take it personally. If they have other commitments at that point, if you're talking about boundary setting, we have to also learn to respect boundaries, right? And the last point, the fifth point, is to practice self-care. This is a buzzword these days, but somehow we seem to misunderstand what that means, okay? So first of all, we need to remind ourselves that if we don't change our situation, no one else will. The Quran tells us that, right? And if I'm depleted, if I'm, not being able to give my best at home because of what I'm doing for other people, then I'm not doing any favors to anyone else, right? So I need to take charge. And secondly, the Quran also reminds us, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu alaykum anfusikum. It is up to you to take care of yourselves, okay? So how do we, how do we know? And one of the things, first of all, to remind ourselves that self-care, the way social media portrays it, is lying on the beach with some orange juice or whatever, and or doing yoga on the top of a mountain, and going on retreats, and all of those are fantastic and completely unrealistic. So if I'm working myself to the bone, thinking, in 3 years I'm going to save enough money to go on that self-care, believe me, I'm going to burn out way faster than that by the time I reach there, right? So I need to remind myself that self-care is not that. That's fantastic, it's not self-care. Self-care is what I do on a daily basis to nurture and fill my own jug, because I cannot keep pouring water from an empty jug. And as women, this conversation is extremely important. Why? Because when we are filled up, when we take charge of our own happiness, who is the biggest beneficiary? Sorry? Well, ourselves for sure. And who else? Our families. When, everyone say it with me, when mama's happy, when mama's not happy, nobody is happy, right? Literally, this is a mantra. It is our responsibility to look after our own happiness, because if we are, and it's a daily practice. So, and one of the things we can do, so if you're having a bad day, instead of unleashing it on others, right, ask for some time off. Say, you know what, today I'm done, like I'm depleted. Okay, the dishwasher, again, so somebody messaged me that, we were waiting for you to mention the dishwasher. So here it goes, right? So if I give up my kitchen for the evening, right? And literally, so when my house was full, and after a long time, because now we're used to being in empty nesters for a while, right? So, and both of us are extremely clean and tidy, so nothing is out of place ever. So it was a challenge, mashallah, having the house full again and people leaving things all over the place. And the only way to survive, I used to pretend, not my house, not my kitchen, I'm done dinner, somebody else's responsibility to clean up, exit. Was it challenging in the beginning? Yeah. Do you get used to it? Really, you do. And you figured, we've been doing it for how many years? You've been married 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Has the medal ever arrived? No. Then what's, why are we doing it? Right? Sorry?
It won't.
And it won't, exactly. But why should it? Why should someone give you a medal because you don't like a crumb on your counter? Like, why would we expect a medal for that, right? It's our own. Now I think in COVID times, because we know no one's coming over, we're probably a lot more relaxed, right? Because a lot of times we have this thing that, can't have, what is it called? Chaos. CHAOS. Can't have anyone over syndrome. Right? Why can't I have anyone over? Because my house not perfect. Right? Good luck with that. Okay. So, when mama's happy, everyone's happy. We need to make it a practice. This needs to be part of our daily ritual to do things that feed us physically, feed us mentally, feed us emotionally, feed us spiritually. When we are depleted, we become needy. We grab at everyone, we are resentful. Resentment is a big sign that your own needs are not being met. When you're happy, you're willing to give. When you're happy, when you feel fulfilled, your jug will have enough that you can give to others. Okay. So, again, and one of the keys, so all of us have different ways of recognizing when we are overwhelmed, when we're depleted, right? One of the keys is, how's the quality of your salah? If the quality of your salah, if you're able to focus, if you're present, likely you're doing okay. But we know, right, when we are too busy, when we are too distracted, then we can't focus in salah as well, right? And we know that salah is what gives us strength. Allah tells us, seek strength with salah. So again, if we're doing it anyway, we are doing that practice, if we just pause for a second before we pray and just make an intention to literally connect with God, because He is the source. It's like literally plugging ourselves into the source, into the source of all energy, right? And if I am praying like this, and I am getting rejuvenated with Salah, then I know this is my, this is my boundary, in the sense that this I need to protect. Because if this goes off, then I know that, everything else, like we all have something, right? For example, I know for me it's sleep. So I need very little sleep, but I do need a few hours. And there are times when I'm very overwhelmed, and I cannot sleep. Like that's the first thing that goes. 2 days it's okay, 3 days, after 4 days, it begins to tell. We are human beings, right? So we need to replenish ourselves. And some of us are just like that. Like, I don't know about you, I don't like to fill gas. I don't like to charge my phone. Like, why can't it just go forever? That's my thinking. Like, how inconvenient to stop and have to fill gas, right? But I know I have to, because I will run out at some point, right? If I don't charge my phone, no matter how impatient I am, it will tell, right? Similarly with ourselves, there is only so much we can keep doing for others without, filling ourselves up. And I think for women in particular, it's really helpful to have this idea that when I'm filled, my family, my family benefits, right? Because we need some sort of motivation for others. Like, we are just geared that way, that if I'm helping somebody else, I'm willing to do it, right? So think of it as doing a favor to, and I know that for my family it is a favor, right? If I'm looking after myself, it's literally a favor, because they're all happy. So we have run out of time, and but this, inshallah, tomorrow we will be starting to talk about challenging relationships. So dealing with ihsan, with people who trigger us, okay? And this is a very good segue, because today was literally the foundation. If we build up our own resilience, like, it's the first step. If we are depleted, we cannot deal with challenging relationships, right? So just, your reflection for this evening, for whoever remembers, is to, consider in your own life where, when you are tired, when you're depleted, how does it show up? How do you behave? Do you get cranky? Do you withdraw? Do you get resentful? Do you get angry at yourself? Just begin to notice, and also begin to notice what you can do, little ways that you can actually look after yourself.